If you're a KAISA hater, this is gonna be a great day for you because Riftbound just released the new Spiritforged FAQ/patch notes, and in it we have massive change to Falling Stars and Icathian Rains amongst other stuff. So if you're playing in Skirmish in Set 1, this will apply to your games. So as you can see here in the text, it says these clarifications take effect immediately. So right now, when you play the game, you're gonna have to learn new interactions with Falling Star and with Icathian Rain, because both they changed the text completely. So Falling Star says now, instead of do this twice, deal 3 to a unit, it says deal 3 to a unit, deal 3 to a unit. Same goes for Icathian Rain. Instead of saying do this 6 times, deal 2 damage to a unit, it just says deal 2 to a unit, deal 2 to a unit, deal 2, deal 2, deal 2, deal 2. And the reason for that is, so from now on, when you play Falling Star, you're gonna just immediately tell the targets for it. You're not gonna wait for the resolution of the Falling Star or Icathian Rain. So your opponent immediately gets the informations, what are you targeting? Then he has a chance to react or counter the spell, because now Not So Fast, so this card over here, is able to counter Icathian Rain or the Falling Star because it says counter enemy spell or ability that chooses a friendly unit or gear. Before this change, you were only able to counter one of the instances of the damage from Falling Star or Icathian Rain because you had to target an ability, not a spell, because before this, Falling Star was creating other cards. Essentially, Falling Star and Icathian Rain were creating virtual cards that were dealing damage, and those could be counted, but never the Falling Star with like Not So Fast. With a, let's say, with the Wind, with the 3 mana counter, you were able to do that, or with like the Reversal, but not with Defy because of the power cost, or not with Not So Fast because you're not able to counter the spell itself. Now you can do that because of this change. So it's a huge buff to green, to Not So Fast, right? And also a huge nerf towards KAISA. But now there are 2 other really big implications that buff Sett and buff any green deck that plays Zhonya or Guardian Angel. All of those 3 cards have essentially the same effect. So when you're a KAISA player and you wanted to, for example, kill a unit that has a Zhonya's Hourglass, you could target the same unit twice. For example, if it has 3 HP, you targeted it twice with the Falling Star, so it kills the unit with the first 3 damage, then it gets targeted the second time because the unit doesn't die, it's still there, so the second target is still there, and it gets resolved after that, so Zhonya's Hourglass gets countered by Falling Star. This also works, for example, for Sett. If a Sett unit would have been, like, for example, you would be able to use a Smoke Bomb and do it -4, so a Sett goes from 7 might to 3, and then you use Falling Star. The Sett player can choose to use his ability to rescue the card, but he still dies because he's still there and gets hit by the second Falling Star. And same for Icathian Rain. So this is actually a huge buff for Sett in Set 1, and also for any green decks in current Set, and also in Spiritforged, and makes KAISA a lot worse. Now I know I'm a dirty KAISA player, so obviously I'm not gonna like this, but I'll be honest with you, I really loved the way that this worked because it was such an intricate detail and allowed you to have such cool like outplays potential, and also outplays by the opponent because they could react in between the triggers. So there was really a lot of skillful expression in using the reflexive triggers in the Icathian Rain and Falling Star, and that is now completely gone. Now, I don't know, the reflexive triggers are still there, they don't disappear, it's just those 2 cards that are being directly nerfed, so I feel like that maybe was not necessary, but that's only my opinion. There are still cards that have reflexive triggers. One of them will be Spiritforged Arise card, which is for Azir. So essentially how it is gonna work is Azir plays Arise. This is Arise. And now it creates the tokens and it will ready them. The act of readying them is gonna create the triggers. So this is gonna be the tap token, this is the tap token, and now the blue line is gonna indicate the reflexive trigger that wants to ready the character. This is where it's ready, right? Ready over here, and the same happens over here. The blue dot is when it becomes ready, right? So the opponent will now have a chance when the first effect of the ready is gonna be happening. My opponent will have a chance to respond over here, right? Or will have a response over here before the second one happens. So you can wait for this to give you new informations and then answer before the other one also gets untapped. So you get more informations. So that's how it's gonna work. The auto reflexive trigger is gonna be introduced with Rel, because when she plays the equipment, you're gonna have a chance to react to that equipment. So essentially, for example, you would be able to play Stupefy to make her 3 attack and a Gust to bounce her to the hand before she will be able to play a equipment that will bust her might to more than 3 essentially. Of course, it will not stop from the equipment being played, but it will not get attached to Rel. The other change in the fact is essentially that they adding a banish zone to Rek'Sai effects and other ones, like for example Reinforce. So essentially when you show a card and you reveal it, you may play it, then it becomes a banished one. So, and if you can't play it from the banish zone for whatever reason, it's gonna be very fringe scenario, then the card stays banished. But it's just very functional. There's nothing like when it comes to like how it plays out, it doesn't really change anything. So it's not that important. It's just for quality of life stuff. And then we have actual erratas, which make the cards just basically not overpowered. And I'll be honest with you, I have not realized that Blood Rush doesn't have this turn. I just assumed it has this turn. My brain literally just added the text this turn to this card. And I think that's literally everyone on the planet, because I never seen anyone play this card and think that it adds permanently a assault 2 to 2 units or 1 unit with assault 4. So that's the change. It says this turn now. Right, then we have Death Grip change, which is huge. This is such a nerf to this card, is actually incredible. There are functional nerfs to this card as well, because I mean it was very weird wording that like it was a mess to play this card. But essentially what changes now, you have to kill the unit after the resolution of it now, right? So you play the card, you wait for the resolution, and then if you kill the card, you give might to another unit, which essentially ruins the combo for Sett and ruins the combo for Soraka, which is very sad, because this card was, I thought that was the intention, that Death Grip has fantastic synergy with those two cards, with this Sett boss and with the Soraka. But now you actually have to use this to destroy a unit, because that's the only requirement to actually get the plus might on another target. So it's still functional. I think this is still a decent card for Azir, but other than that, it might be problematic to squeeze in other decks. Maybe in Fiora as well, but I don't think this has any spot in Sett from now on. Although it's still a decent card, but it was just so much better there. So yeah, the implications on this one are huge. There's also a functional change to Edge of Night, because the card literally didn't work before, because the equipment would have to be in base. If it's played on battlefield, then it will go back to base, because it's not attached to anyone, and the timing of this wording was not working. So they are fixing that, so you can actually attach Edge of Night to a unit. Again, no one was playing in a way that it didn't work. Everyone just assumed it worked. They are just changing the wording so it actually does work now. The same for Janna. I've never seen anyone actually think that your opponent has to have a unit on the battlefield to be able to play Janna, but they're changing the wording to make sure that you can play Janna on a battlefield that doesn't have an opponent unit over here. Same happens to Jax. He was actually not able to attach cards that that lost quick draw when being played onto the board. Like, it's kind of funny. Your equipment in hand has quick draw, you play it on the board, then it loses quick draw and it cannot be attacked. Like, they're just fixing that, so now it works like everyone thought it worked. It's like, again, those like kind of like shortcuts that every player was doing because they expected that to work, but that was not the reality. And then the next one is Kato. I feel like we already knew that this is coming, because the card would be incredibly good if it could target himself. Kato cannot target himself now, has to target a different unit. Still playable, just not incredibly good card anymore. So that's about it. Then we have a clarification of Tiana Crown Guard, that your opponent is not able to get points when she's on the battlefield, but you, for example, are gonna be able to draw a card. So that's the difference, right? So when you're at 7 and you are meant to win, you cannot win because of Tiana, then you just instead gaining a card, and that's about it. And also it's very important to understand that Tiana doesn't stop any effects like hold and conquer. Those are still happening, which is, by the way, different on Forgotten Monument. Here those effects don't get to be actually done because players can't score here until their third turn, which means that the hold and score effects like conquer are not gonna work. There was also a mistake here that made absolutely Yone just broken, and in a way that it's not like overpowered, it just literally couldn't work. So again, this is a change where Yone now actually works as intended. So when you're going to an open battlefield and you conquer it, you're winning now. So, and you're doing the effect. There's a ton of rules clarification as well. I mean, not a ton of, but when it comes to the 6-drop Draven, there's actually a very big clarification of how he works. So essentially we have a clarification of how combat damage is being dealt and when combat is being considered done. So unfortunately, this means that a Draven, the character, still draws cards when he's playing like Fight or Flight or a Rebuke, and he bounces opponents from the showdown, so he wins by default. Right? This is literally what they said. Think of it as winning as by default. That's when Draven wins, and he will draw a card from his Executioner card. Right? Now, when it comes to Draven though, there's a big difference because he's not gonna be able to win the game from 6 points to 8. And this is explained this way. If I win on the attack and conquer, does this happen before or after I score, before or after conquer effects? We're talking about the big Draven, the 6-drop Audacious, right? That says the first time I win a combat each turn, you score 1 point. So Draven's ability will trigger and resolve before you gain your regular point for scoring a battlefield and before any conquer effects are triggered. This means that you can't win from 6 points by conquering a battlefield with Draven without having scored all other battlefields. You'll gain your point from Draven, then the game will see that you're at 7 points and gives you a card draw instead of a point for conquering. This is a significant nerf to Draven Audacious because one of the strategies with him would be closing out a game by moving him with Ride the Wind or like Yone's ability at 8 resources. There's also clarification on Pickpocket because tokens were assigned a null when it comes to their values. That's obviously just idiotic. So now any tokens in the game, they have cost 0, so Pickpocket can actually destroy gold. Again, no one assumed that they can't, but now they can. And by the way, Pickpockets, they are gonna be a meta choice because seals are getting so much play now lately in the metagame that if you play blue, you should have Pickpockets in your sideboard or even in main, like for example if you play Victor. So this is suddenly a very decent card. There's also a small change with Rumble, and that essentially clarifies what happens to a token when it gets recycled. So essentially the token that is being recycled by Rumble, for example, gets to the bottom of your deck because it's recycled, but then it vanishes. This can have some potential synergies if there will be, for example, a gear that will say when you recycle a card, something happens, because technically your mech is being recycled, although it's not a card, so it would have to be different wording. Anyway, my point is there's some potential here. There's also just a clarification of Spellsonger that it doesn't copy the additional text that is granted by other effects. It's only granting the effects and text of the original card, so you can't really go like super duper bonkers on it. And for example, with Aphelios, when he gets Spellsonger on him, he's gonna be able to choose 2 times the effect, but they can be even 2 times of the same effect, even though, you know, he says he can't, but it's essentially he has the same text twice, so he can choose like Ready to Runes and then Ready to Runes if he has Spellsonger, but you have to keep track which ones are you doing. There's also a clarification on the might that I explained in the video already, in the 12 interactions video, if I'm not mistaken, like when it comes to like that the cards can go below 1 might to 0 or even minus, right? So essentially when something gets to 0 might or minus might, they will still have to be dealt at least 1 point of damage to die. But if something is at 0 might or -3 might, they suddenly don't heal your opponents or something because you have -3. You're just not dealing any damage, and that's about it. The difference here is that if I'm taking something to like -3 and my opponent plays a cleave, then it goes to 0, like if it has assault, and it doesn't go from 0 to 3, for example. There's also a clarification here on Ezreal. This is a very common question. Ezreal works, of course, on acceleration costs and on repeat costs, but there are also cards like, for example, Blast Corps Cadet, which is a card that says additional cost, right? So we have a card that says you may pay energy and power as an additional cost to play me. Action, for example, also pays an additional cost, and those are the cards that are being applied to when it comes to the discount from Ezreal, but nothing else. There's also a clarification on hostile takeover, that it does start a combat if there's, like, for example, one unit for your opponent at a showdown. Use hostile takeover on it, you take control of that unit, it swaps the side, and it starts the showdown, so you get the point essentially. And yeah, that's about it. And there's also a clarification for temporal portal, by the way, with Find Your Center, which is pretty intuitive, but maybe not for people who never played a card game before. Temporal portal allows you to add repeat to another card, and the problem here with Find Your Center is that it says if an opponent's score is within 3 points of the victory, this costs 2 less. So essentially how it works is that if you're gonna repeat Find Your Center while it's being discounted, you're gonna pay 1 for the original cost, but then the repeat is gonna be the original cost of the card without the discount, which I think is logical, but it can be confusing for newer players. And the last thing, so that was in the core rules, that was a mistake. It said that Weapon Master didn't have you may, and obviously it should have. So they're changing that to you may, so you don't have to use a Weapon Master. That's gonna be it for today. Thank you for watching, and if you have any rules questions, leave them below the video. Thank you for spending some time with me. Bye bye now.